Heavy Cardboard, episode 27, the Splotter interview. Coming to you from really damn hot Denver, Colorado. Welcome to Heavy Cardboard, where we talk medium and heavy strategy board games, war games, 18xx, and other related topics in the board gaming hobby. We're your hosts. I'm Edward.
I'm Tony.
First off, how to get a hold of us on the web. HeavyCardboard.com is our website. Twitter, where we are super active at Heavy Cardboard. We want to hear from you guys. Facebook, Heavy Cardboard. Email, contact@HeavyCardboard.com. And please, as always, take a moment and rate us, and definitely, please, review us on iTunes. It's greatly appreciated. Speaking of which, thanks to the new Coloradoan, Matt McChesney, for the review on iTunes. Mucho appreciated. Oh.
Appreciado.
There you go. Sure, we'll go with that.
Let's also remind everybody about our sponsor, Game Surplus. You can find them on the web, www.gamesurplus.com. They have a lot of great import games, big inventory, good folks too.
Yeah, if there's something that you guys want or are curious about and don't see, shoot Velma an email, and if she doesn't have it, she'll try and track it down, and if she's able to, she'll get it for you. So, good people, proud to be associated with them, and just tell them that Heavy Cardboard sent you.
So, let's see, today's only Monday, but this will be out on Thursday, July 2nd. Yep. So, a little bit early. Happy birthday, United States.
Yeah, happy birthday, America. This is what I spent 9 years of my life for in the Marine Corps, so everybody...
So that we can get 3-day weekends?
I guess that's one way.
I am looking forward to that.
Very much so. We have a game day set up for Friday and Saturday.
Don't know which or either or neither of those I'll be at with the kids moving into the new house and everything.
Right,
so.
But hopefully you can make at least some of it.
Oh, yeah.
Take a minute and remember what July 4th is for those listening here in the States. For those overseas, hey, it's called Saturday. So yeah, we're starting off our second year here with our first episode of year 2, if you will, episode 27. Starting it off with a bang, eh?
Indeed.
I mean, we got to sit down with the Splotter fellas, and man, I can't wait for y'all to be able to hear it. I think it's funny, it's fun, but it's really insightful as well, which you guys will hear shortly. So hopefully don't fast forward through the rest of it, because we think the rest of the content's pretty good too.
One thing I thought was really cool not really during the interview, but we got to just chat with them before and after we started recording, and those are two cool guys that you just want to hang out and play some games with and talk board gaming. Yeah,
they're geeks like we are. I mean, they're
way geeks, but they are way cool.
Yeah, good people. So before we get to all that awesomeness, I'm sure many of you have known, and some of you may not, that there's been mad drama in the board gaming world in the last couple of weeks, and I figure
a tumultuous time.
Yeah, I figure I'd recap it for those that haven't been privy, and for those that have, it'll be brief. So to start off with, Queen Games was trying to publish Donald X. Vaccarino's latest expansion for Kingdom Builder. Mm. The contract was due to expire June 30th. The Kickstarter was due to end on June 30th. But if they hadn't physically published the game by June 30th, they were in breach of, it wasn't supposed to be printed. So they went to Donald X and said, hey, can we have an extension? And Donald X said, no, pull the Kickstarter. So they did. They had to, because it's not going to get published. It may get published in 2016 or later, but seriously, kudos for him for standing up to Queen Games and for other publishers, because for him and other designers, because he and a couple of other designers who had games published through Queen Games had not gotten paid for 2014, and here we are at the midway point of 2015. Cool. So props to him on that. Then there was the kerfuffle between Eagle Games and Martin Wallace.
Gesundheit.
So Eagle said they were going to publish a second edition of Martin Wallace's classic Brass, And
a deluxe edition even.
Right. And
Metal Money or something like that?
Something. And Mr. Wallace said, no, you're not, because you don't have the rights to do so. That one's still unsettled as of right now. It's a he said, she said, and I guess discussions going on behind closed doors. And hopefully we'll find out the outcome of that.
Question.
Answer.
Do you think the Metal Money would have been plain?
Oh, absolutely.
Just flat disc,
sure,
but made of metal.
Not from Eagle Games, but if it were Wallace's idea, probably
That'd be so funny,
right? So, due to the above kerfuffle between Eagle Games and Martin Wallace, there's kind of been some spillover onto Eagle Games' current Kickstarter of friend of the show Vital Lacerda's latest game, The Gallerist. That said, it's going strong, and it looks to probably double its $30,000 funding goal. So regardless of how any of us or any of you feel about Eagle Games, we're genuinely happy for Vital to get his game published.
You bet.
And even though the game is going to be his lightest game, it's supposed to physically be about 8 pounds. It looks gorgeous. Everything looks cool. I'm looking forward to giving it a try. Lastly, we can't have drama and not mention the latest from Game Salute, right? In fact, I think this is only the second time I've ever mentioned them on the podcast. Anyway, it seems they had a small card and dice game called 9-Shooter Quick Draw that made over 300% of its funding goal. Yet, when they shipped the game, they didn't provide a box, even though in the campaign they said folks were getting a box in which the game will go in. Nothing's going to surprise me at this point when it comes to them going forward, save for maybe folks who still want to back their projects. That would be the only surprise left in store.
The ironic thing that I saw on some of the Twitter activity was one guy said he got his game without a box that was shipped to him in a box. So maybe that was the box.
Yeah, maybe, but not according to their Kickstarter page. But yeah, moving on.
One more thing from me, because this was weird when I pulled into my driveway after work today before heading over here.
Okay.
You know what was laying in my driveway inside of a plastic bag?
No.
A phone book.
Oh.
We still have those?
I mean, that's pretty interesting. I haven't seen a phone book in... I
was dumbfounded. Like, what is this thing? Why is this thing?
Put it in a museum somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, we don't... payphones. You don't see them anymore.
I got to tell you, I haven't even thought about a phone book, yet alone seen one in years. I don't even know how long.
Right. It just disappeared, right?
I just thought that was bizarre.
Yeah, that is.
I am certain that we both have recently acquired some games.
We have. Not too many on my end, however. The first one came all the way across the pond from France, which is an autographed copy of Alban Viard's new game, Small City.
Which comes in a big box.
Yeah, it's a massive box. It's like Shogun size box almost.
Yeah, it's big.
It really, it's way bigger. I expected like your typical like Feld type size box or
a normal bookshelf game.
Right, new. This is that on steroids. In fact, that was one of the reasons that Paul Chad said he didn't get a copy. It's because I don't need a box that big, he said. So anyway, I got my copy. Haven't played it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And it's supposed to be a cool city builder.
Cool.
So looking forward to that. The only other thing that I've acquired was my Kickstarter copy of Hostage Negotiator. Made it in. It's a solo game from AJ Porfirio. I'm butchering this. I apologize, AJ. Porfirio.
Okay.
Anyway, it looked cool. It was super cheap. It was less than $20, I think.
Wow.
And it's a cool idea. I mean, you're a hostage negotiator. That's kind of a cool theme. I haven't seen that anywhere. So I was like, yeah. So I backed it a number of months ago, and it got here, and everything looks great.
The expansion is called Hostage Taker.
Right. Playing the flip side. So how about for you?
Well, actually, you've acquired one more game. 1865 Sardinia.
No, I have not. I told you, until it crosses the threshold into my house.
Well, yesterday I bought us each a copy. So.
All right, thank you.
Thanks to my new 18XX addiction.
And that is a massive box, dude. I had no idea. I expected it to be a small box. And, dude, that thing, like, long, like almost antiquity-sized box. It's a little bit smaller than Roads and Boats Antiquity, but
Paul
not
Chad
much.
has loaned us his copy for the time being.
To check out and stuff, yeah.
Also, due to my new 18XX addiction, thanks. I did a P&P of 1881 Das Berliner Straßenbahnspiel.
Real quick, anybody who's fluent in German, I would like a critique and find out how good that was, because that sounded good to me. I'm just curious.
I did click my heels when I said it. So. Let's see. My copy of Ra came in. Thanks, Todd. My kids, thanks kids, got me a copy of Viva Java.
Which we're going to be speaking about another game of theirs later on in this podcast.
Okay. It's a coffee-themed game, and
God knows you own stock in Starbucks.
That's correct. Me and the wife both. So, and
with as much as you drink, I hope so.
Thanks to Travis, my copy of Great Zimbabwe that I got from him arrived as well. So, very pleased with the new additions.
Rock on
to the family.
Right. That reminds me, we're going to have to get Great Zimbabwe back to the table soon.
Oh yeah.
So that covers what we've acquired. How about anything you're hunting or anticipating or on the shopping list?
Well, we mentioned our sponsor Game Surplus already, so it's time to hit them up and pull the trigger on 1862.
Another.
Thanks again to my 18XX addiction.
I love it. No, that's fantastic.
Is there a treatment program?
I just wish you would get games that I don't already have, so that we have. But let's face it, with Paul Chad, we have pretty much most things covered already.
You, sir?
Not really actively hunting for anything. The two that I'll mention are the same two from last episode. 18 Ardennes, after having played it finally, which we'll get into here in a minute, definitely going to want a copy of that. I think
I share that with you.
And also, I mentioned there's the Carson City Kickstarter that's going on right now, and the only reason I mentioned that is they have the third part 3 of the Cole trilogy, House Spec Connect, and the rules haven't been posted. They said they're supposed to be posted any day. So once I see those, if I take a look at it, I want it for the completionist in me because it's part 3 of the Cole trilogy. But the fact that it's not Spielworks and I haven't seen any rules on it yet, I want to see that. So as long as those come out and it looks good, then I'll back that. I'll back the Carson City for $1, and then for the 45 extra euro, whatever it is, to get that game. Other than that, not really hunting anything.
What about playing?
Well, a lot together. You and I, we tried out your copy of Ra, which is the first time I got a chance to play that. You're going to talk more about that. We got Viticulture with the Tuscany expansion back to the table.
That's right. You guys came over. We drank some wine. Well, your wife and I drank the wine.
I had coffee.
My wife and you, had coffee.
Real quick, I had my only previous play of this was 2 years ago when Viticulture originally came out. And this is before the Grande Meeple part.
Right.
And
the
this
Grande Worker.
Right, and this is before Tuscany, obviously. And I'll be honest, I was less than enthused about the game, and so I hadn't played it until this last week, and I thoroughly enjoyed my more recent play of it, and looking forward to playing it again. So props to Jamie Stegmaier on that one.
It's a fun game.
1830, we got another game of it in.
Which went much better.
It did. It hummed along now that we knew what we were doing. 18 Ardennes, which mentioned that is just a fun, cool merger timing game. Really cool. Yeah. We'll talk more about it here in a couple of episodes when we do the 18XX primer.
I even had fun auctioning off all the privates early.
At the beginning, all 15 of them, right? It was
cool.
And then last night, actually, Paul Chat came over and we busted out a couple of quick games. Wabash Cannonball, a.k.a. Chicago Express. Really like that. I like Irish Gauge more. I should mention that Wabash Cannonball is a winsome game, which similar to Irish Gauge, which we played SNCF and loved.
And all that.
But looking forward to playing my copy of Chicago Express in the future. And also we played the Downfall of Pompeii, which it's always funny to throw people into the volcano.
Oh, yeah,
that
man.
never gets old.
Love it.
Yeah, so that's it for me. So other than the stuff I mentioned,
Yeah,
how
the
about
only
for you?
thing that's on my list that's not on your list, and there's a couple of those I didn't play with you guys, was Phil, our friend, heard me talking about in our Uwe Rosenberg episode that I'd like to try Farmerama. Mm-hmm. And so he tweeted us and was like, Tony, I got a copy you can borrow. So he brought it over, and I haven't played a game of it yet, but I tinkered around with it. And the little wheel mechanic of moving it around your farm and having to spend water to do that, and it controls where you can plant crops and put your animals and things like that, and what you can harvest from. It was really pretty cool. Boy, my imagination went crazy with that mechanic. Rest of the game, whatever. It's not going to. It's not a feature game for heavy co-op.
Oh,
or
sure.
That.
It's.
But I want you to play it with me just to experience that wheel, and because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying it.
All right, Edward, let's open a cold frosty brew here.
Let's talk some Brew Crafters. Published in 2015, designed by Ben Rossett, published by Dice Hate Me Games. Plays 2 to 5 players. I've only played it twice thus far. I've played it 3 and 4 players. How about you?
1, 2, 3, 4. Both 4-player games. I
Okay.
played it twice.
All right. So, in Brew Crafters, it's an action drafting game or worker placement where players take on the role of running competing microbreweries, trying to be the most prestigious one around. The game is played over the course of 3 years, with 4 seasons in each year. Within each season, there are 2 different phases. In the first phase, players are using their 2 meeples in the market, acquiring resources, money, and staff, which you'll need to trick out your brewery as you brew beer.
Yeah.
These actions are blocked once someone selects one, a la standard worker placement game. However, in the second phase, you're going to use shift workers, or your shift worker or workers, if you've hired more than one, to work in the actual brewery doing one of a few different things. You're going to be building infrastructure in your brewery to help yourself out in subsequent turns, do research, i.e. move along a tech tree. Also, you can claim your own personal recipe that only you can brew. And finally, you can brew beer. You get reputation points or VPs, mostly from, wait for it, brewing beer, and whomever has the most rep at the end of the game wins. It's clear that Agricola was a major inspiration for the game, but there is a significant difference aside from the theme, and that's that actions in the second phase, i.e. building and brewing, aren't limited to only one player. So, boy, do you get a lot of stuff for your money in this game.
Yeah.
There is tons of variety when it comes to the different recipes to brew, and it's a simple thing or a small thing, but I like the choices of the names that they gave all the recipes. Now, you said I've yet to punch my copy. We've actually only played our buddy Paul Chad's copy because he had it before we got our copies. And you punched it for him, and it took you how long?
Yeah, 45 minutes to punch it, bag it, and get it bagged right.
Yeah, there is an insane amount of components to this, and
wow.
I'm saying this is a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
The component quality in the artwork I thought was great. I dig the attention to detail on the player boards and such. On the player boards, I think it is that there's a couple guys in one of the rooms that's playing Compounded, which is another Dice Hate Me game, which I thought was pretty cool. The theme comes through and really adds to the game. It's really, really well done. It's integrated really well. Some things are abstracted out. The actual brewing process is fairly abstracted. Basically, it's recipe filling. Like in Yedo or Lords of Waterdeep, that type of recipe filling. But the theme really does come through. It's really simple mechanically, but will really burn some brain power trying to devise the most efficient way to get your resources, as well as to convert them into the various brews.
And you have to do that. You're strapped for cash a little bit, and so part of the game is how to avoid loans early on, or at least minimize the number of them that you take. Because in this game, loans aren't paid back. They just cost you at the end in VPs.
Exactly. Having to brew basic beers before moving on to the more exotic ones makes sense, both thematically and mechanically.
Right.
Thematically, I mean, you're not going to brew, a coffee infused,
Right.
stout or whatnot.
You got to walk first.
Exactly. And so that made a lot of sense. And mechanically, it's a good way to kind of ease people into it to where they can't just race for the big ticket items there at the beginning.
Right.
Kind of on that note, players can get extra shift workers that I mentioned earlier, but you can't get them right away. You're forced to brew certain quantities of beer before you're able to acquire more help. This keeps the game from being all about getting more workers right away, as is the normal, right thing to do in a lot of worker placement games. So I thought that was a really cool way of preventing a rush to get more workers immediately.
Those other shifts are progressively more expensive than the earlier shifts too. So as your capabilities increase, your upkeep increases, but not at an even pace. It ramps up.
Right. And at the end of it, and I didn't mention this, but at the end of each of the 3 years is when you're going to pay for your facilities as well as the workers that you have. So that's kind of that, heat and feed from Agricola type thing.
There's some flexibility built into the game too. The tech tree you mentioned for the research, it's a double-sided. There's an advanced side and a basic side. And then the basic boards that have the action spaces in there, there are some blank spaces and some extra tiles where you can add other actions to the game if you desired to.
Right. So there's tons of replayability and variability within the game itself.
You bet. About the only thing that sends me a little bit on the game, it can go a little long with the higher player counts.
Yeah, I noticed that it does tend to drag a little bit on the back end. It's like you start to feel the amount of time that's gone by.
Yeah. I don't know if that was unfamiliarity and us being slow or just the game or both or whatever, but
I think that's a fair critique at least. Yeah. There's a couple other things that I wanted to mention on that side. The player aids, they're small and they're double-sided. I would have liked to have had a larger player aid with everything on one side. It's a minor quibble, but it's enough to at least mention. If your eyesight's not that great, it might be a little bit, of a struggle.
Right.
So you may want to, I think somebody on BGG has printed out a larger single sheet type thing.
Someone's made a score sheet too that's very helpful. Not only in just making score at the end, but helping to educate new players on what the scoring is.
So it does take quite a bit of time to set up as well as to tear down after the game. Just know that going in, and it is a massive table hog. I've heard people say Argent, the consortium, is as well.
Yeah.
But it can't be much bigger than this. It's just there's so much stuff. Especially in a 4 or 5 player game, you need a large table to play this. Lastly, the cardboard punch-outs for the shift workers, I wasn't too keen on that. I mean, everything else, it's thick cardboard, don't get me wrong. But for your regular workers, you have, wooden meeples and you have wooden resources and all that stuff. They're cubes, but nonetheless, it's wood. It's hard to see these. They're just little cardboard punch-outs. They didn't include any little, standees.
Yeah.
Nothing. We acquired some standees, and so we use those. But you would have thought they could have come up with something a little bit better than that.
Put some standees in there and charge me 50 more cents.
Right. But honestly, those are small quibbles with the game. I've only played it twice.
Right, a couple here.
It's not enough for me to rate the game, and it's possible, I'm not saying that we will, but it's possible we do a feature on this in a future episode, so that's why I didn't want to go too in-depth on this. But I gotta say, Amanda and I have both enjoyed our plays of this thus far, and I know you have as well.
Absolutely.
The thing that kind of holds me back a little bit, though, to be honest, long term, is that Agricola exists. That said, we're glad to own both, and I'm sure Brew Crafters will continue to see table time at our house. And that's Brew Crafters. So, Tony.
Yes, sir.
Why don't we talk about a game that I know you're a big fan of,
Yes.
the main mechanic, which is auctions and bidding mechanism. So there you go. Let's talk some Ra.
Ra is an old favorite of mine that I've recently reacquired and decided that we should give it a little love. After all, the game is number 94 on the BGG rankings. It's got a 748 average, so that's not too shabby. And I gave my physical copy away a few years ago when the iOS version came out, thinking, wow, this is really a good implementation. I'm never going to play the physical one again.
Oops.
Yeah. And then it went out of print, and so now it's eligible for coverage by Heavy Cardboard. and I was like, crap, I need to get my physical copy back. So I got one. Anyway, it's a 1999 game by Rainer Knizia, the master. It's a 2 to 5 player game, takes 45 to 60 minutes depending on player count. And as Ed mentioned, it's an auction game. It's a bidding set collection game that sometimes offers some push your luck elements. And over the course of 3 rounds that they call epics in the game because it's got an Egyptian theme to it, each player will draw a tile from a bag and add it to a display of previously drawn tiles, or they can start a bidding round for the tiles that are already on display. So that's your choice as a player on your turn. The different tiles represent various types of sets that are being collected by the players, all Egyptian themed. So there's 8 different kinds of monuments. There's pharaohs, gods, Niles, etc. At the end of each epic, there's going to be some scoring. So the tiles are set up that you can collect them for either short or long-term scoring opportunities. The bidding, though, that's the heart of the game. And it's something that Dr. Knizia excels at giving players, is auction stuff. Each player begins the game with 3 sun tiles, and the sun tiles have a value of between 2 and 16. And the values are balanced between the players at the start of the game.
They're predetermined or even mixed.
Depending on how many players, this is how it goes. And these sun tiles are really the currency in the game. The game board itself will be loaded with the number 1 valued sun tile, and that's going to be included in the winnings of the first set of tiles that gets auctioned off. You can bid using one of your sun tiles, or you can pass. And it's a once-around bid, so the person who offered the highest valued sun tile wins the auction for the tiles. The winning player will take all of the tiles displayed, and they'll take that one sun tile from the center, replacing it with the sun tile that they've won the auction with. So, if it's the very first auction of the game, and I win by bidding a 10, I am going to take the 1 valued sun tile and into my collection. By the way, I'm going to turn it over because it's only good in the next epic. I'm going to put the 10 in its spot, so that's available in the next auction, and then I'm going to collect all the tiles that I won. So now the next auction, not only is it however many tiles, but there's also a 10 sun tile available for the next epic. It's pretty cool. So with 3 sun tiles, you're only going to get a chance to win 3 auctions in a given epic. There are a handful of negative tiles, like there's a funeral that'll kill pharaohs, and there's earthquakes that'll kill some monument tiles. So when those come out, they're going to destroy certain things that players have collected, or collected by the player who that wins the auction for those things.
So it kind of lessens the value
potentially
of the auction,
of the
current
but
auction
not always.
that they're in. Correct.
And the timer of the game are raw tiles. There's 30 raw tiles in the game in a 5-player game.
Which is the sun god, and there's a track for him on the top of the board.
That's the clock. So when 10 come out, end of epic 1. Then the next 10, end of epic 2, etc. And you do scoring at those times.
Well, unless you're me, then you don't score much at all.
Well, in spite of that, I think some of the cool things about the game is that it does offer excellent short-term and long-term scoring. Some of the tiles are an investment in what you're going to take, like the monuments. They're only going to score at the end of the game.
One of the things that really adds a whole layer depth, or a whole extra layer, I should say, is the whole what tile is out there. If it's a high-value tile, like in your example, a 10.
The sun tile in the auction?
So I'm not only winning the actual tiles, but I'm winning that so that I'm setting myself up with that 10 tile to be able to use that 10 in the next epic.
Yeah.
And maybe I won this auction with a 4. So I just went from a 4 value bid for this epic to a 10 value bid the next epic. And I dig that you not only have to take into account the tiles, but also
next round.
Right.
Every time someone pulls a tile out of the bag, you must constantly reevaluate what that is worth to you and to the other players given the sun tiles that are still remaining. For example, can I get that for my 7? I don't know, man. It looks pretty good, and Ed's got an 8. Crap, I'm going to have to use my 12. And it's just, you might end up, quote-unquote, overpaying for something. That's how it works. You need to decide when is a good time to overpay. When can I just let this go? Don't worry. I'll let him have it for the 8. I'll get something out of my 7. Just that constant reevaluation.
Very dynamic.
Incredible dynamic. And here's the thing. This is a random game, right? You're drawing a tile out of a bag. The randomness is what makes that magic happen.
Yeah, I feel like it's... I mean, I guess I haven't mentioned, this is the first time I ever played Ra, was the other day in this game. And I didn't feel like it was an uncomfortable amount of randomness because it makes that dynamic.
Right. You couldn't do that without it.
Right. If it were in a set order, then it would be, you'd be able to figure it out.
Right.
But you don't know out of this huge bag of tiles what's coming out, and what you draw in one game in every auction is going to be completely different than what you're going to do in the next game. And so the values of the various auctions will change every auction, in every game,
every draw,
it's very, very cool. I think this is, I now understand why Ra is such a well-regarded auction bidding game. Totally get that.
Another cool aspect of the randomness is the Ra tiles that, monitor the length of the round. So when 10 come out in a 5-player game, you don't know when will that 10th tile come out. And the exact place where that's a big, fun thing and where the push your luck comes in is when someone happens to be the only player with sun tiles left in the round.
And this is exactly what happened in, I think it was the second epic in our game. Everyone had used all 3 of their sun tiles already, so I was the only one left in the auction. So I basically had free auctions.
Right.
And so I would keep drawing. And there were a couple of negative tiles that came out, and I was like, So I filled up that, and I was like, nah, I'll just wipe it instead of using it. Well, where this ended up biting me in the butt was there were only 2 Ra spots left before the epic ends. And when the epic ends, there isn't an auction at the end of it.
It's over.
It's over. And so I pushed it too far, and I ended up getting greedy, and I paid for it. But yeah, I should, right? I mean, it was my greed that got me there.
You're the poker player.
Right.
That's what everyone said around the table.
Right.
Well,
well.
The only thing I think maybe in the negative side of things is with 5 players, it can feel a little chaotic. Like you have less opportunity to act on those valuations that are constantly changing than with 3 or 4 players. There is a little bit of mitigation in that because you never know when 2 players down the line they're going to draw a Ra tile and you'll get to act on your valuation and potentially bid. But it can be a little chaotic, waiting for it to come back to you so that you can act on the auction.
I could see that. Obviously, this is the only experience I have with the game, but I could see less players giving you somewhat more control because there's less time in between your turns.
Correct.
For me, the randomness was fine as far as the length of the game. If it had been maybe half an hour longer, it might have been a little uncomfortable and not as enjoyable. But no, I really dug it, and I'd like to play it again.
I'm going to rate the game a 5. I've played it a bunch over the years, and it's a good, lighter auction game to keep my mind thinking.
Cool. Yeah, I'm not going to rate it with only one play, but look, I'm glad you reacquired it so we can play it some more.
So, what do you guys think about Ra out there? Let us know. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Whatever. So,
hit us
Ra.
up. Yeah, hit us up in the guild.
Right on.
So y'all have been patient, and we appreciate it. Hopefully you haven't fast-forwarded to get to this point, but you've been patient, so let's kick the Splotter interview.
You bet. We were very excited to be able to spend about an hour with the Splotter Spellen Brain Trust, and also we're pretty excited about the response from the Heavy Cardboard Guild and offering questions. Thank you, community. You guys rock. We took a lot of those questions into the interview with us, as you'll see. Some of them got asked, and some of them got answered along the way.
Yeah, without us having to ask.
Right. So without further ado, here is Heavy Cardboard's interview with Joris and Jeroen.
A couple of months ago, I reached out to today's guest to ask about the design philosophy behind one of their games that we just finished playing. And while I was at it, I thought, why not try and get them on the show for an interview? Not only did they answer my question, but they enthusiastically agreed to come on and answer more questions. Their design credits read like a grail wish list for many in the hobby.
Indeed.
Indonesia, Antiquity, The Great Zimbabwe, Bus, Roads and Boats, as well as a plethora of other titles. They also have the highly anticipated Food Chain Magnate coming later this year. So it's needless to say that we're both excited and honored to welcome to the Heavy Cardboard Podcast Jeroen Duman and Joris Weersinger, the dynamic designers behind Splotter Spellen. Welcome to the show, fellas.
Thanks. That's great.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks for accepting it.
Pleasure's on this end.
So before we get started, we wanted to mention that we opened up questions to our listeners over on our guild on BGG, and needless to say, we had quite the response. So we have a mix of our questions as well as selected ones from the folks in the guild. So unless you guys have any questions, let's get rolling.
Go ahead.
All right. So first off, tell us a little bit about yourselves, where you're from, what you do for a living, because designing games and running Splotter is only a part-time thing for you both, right?
Yeah, that's right. Jeroen, if I start, that's okay. Jeroen and I actually know each other because we used to study in the same town, and we used even to live in the same house for a while. Which is a student house where you had lots of people living there, and that's how we started designing games. By now, unfortunately, we live about 2 hours apart, so not so easy anymore. We live in the Netherlands, in Europe, and my normal life does not consist of making board games, but still of making games, because I own a company that makes games for rehabilitation for very, very old people who suffer from dementia, people who suffer from stroke. And we let them exercise and do games which are the exact opposite of the Splotter games. They are the simplest games that you have ever seen in your life.
That's pretty awesome.
Because you founded a company that's what you do, right?
That's what I do. Yeah, this company makes my living. We have 23 people working in the company. We sell all over the world.
That's awesome.
It's a strange business, but it's a very thankful way of using games for a good purpose.
Absolutely.
That's really, really cool. So how about you, Jeroen?
It's also been great to see Joris' company grow over the years. For myself, I work for a bigger company. I do research for a living. My background is in mathematics and physics, and I mostly do cryptography nowadays, or more or less security research.
Very cool.
Super.
All right, so other than the board game hobby, what are your hobbies? What do you do for fun other than design board games?
Design board games?
There's not much time for other things, I imagine, with the two companies in both of your lives.
Yeah. Well, also play board games, of course, but for myself, I also enjoy reading and a little bit of photography, but I don't have much time for that.
Sure. Is there anything that in particular that got you guys interested in playing games?
I used to play games when I was very, very, very young. I used to design games when I was very young. So even at the age of 6 or 7, friends would come over to my house to play on the express condition that they wouldn't be forced to play test games that I had just.
That's awesome.
So I guess that hobby has been with me for a very long time. I don't know what got me into it. It's not that my parents like games so much, and certainly my older sister was always had to play games with me. Hates them with a vengeance. So that's and luckily her she has children now, and I'm teaching her children how to love games. So I'm getting back at her once more now that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't get started designing games that young, but I did also play them relatively young already, and both board and card games and also computer games.
Awesome. So, Jeroen, we think that you're a big 18xx fan.
Yes. How did you guess?
Huge.
What excites you about 18xx and Joris? Are you an 18xx fan as well?
Go ahead, Jeroen. Talk about your love.
Okay. Now, I think what I love most about the game is the split between what the parties actually are doing. In that the players themselves are investors and they're investing in these abstract companies, and whoever owns the most shares in a company gets to run it and do however well or however bad they want, and then give it to another player if it's doing too bad.
Yes.
Foolish. As Joris has taught me, I think. But
yeah, I think I introduced you to the game. Yeah.
Yes.
I also really love 18xx games, although perhaps not quite as much as Jeroen does. But yeah.
Awesome. We're huge fans.
All right. So other than 18xx games, what are some other non-splatter games? What are I know Jeroen has very eclectic tastes when it comes to games. He's kind of all over the map. But other than 18xx, what do you enjoy playing?
For myself, one of the things that I've relatively recently discovered are plethora of all kinds of little Japanese games.
Oh yeah, those are getting big.
Those indeed are getting quite big, and there are really nice ideas in there as well. Not all of them work very well, but most of them have neat ideas in there, and some of them are really great to play.
And yours?
Well, what I normally enjoy most are quite heavy strategy games, preferably with a business or a historical background or topic. I don't get to play them as much because if I have a lot of time, I normally play test the Splotter games.
Sure.
And I'm always in to play any game once, and there Jeroen is a great person to know, because when you come into his house, it's always filled with piles and piles of new games that you've never heard of that he absolutely has to play at least once.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I've seen that Jeroen has a extensive collection on Board Game Geek, 3,600 games.
Wow.
Which I thought I was doing well, but he absolutely dwarfs my collection.
You guys would be pretty fun to hang out with.
Yeah, no doubt.
Do you have any favorite?
Maybe also one of the things there, because I've only relatively recently, I think back in 2011 now, started logging my plays on Board Game Geek. And since then, I also decided that I want to play every game in my collection at least once again. So that's an ongoing quest.
Yeah.
Very cool. Is it going well?
Yeah, I'm at about 65% now, I think.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. Do you guys have any favorite board game designers?
Yeah, it's always hard. It's always hard to say if you. I still think that 1830 is the nicest game. And by the way, Francis Tresham is also a very, very nice person. We once made a 1830 like game, and we showed it to him, and and we were quite young then and not hadn't done so much yet, and he was extremely positive and helpful and nice about it. So. I think he would deserve that credit, even though he hasn't made much of interest lately.
Sure, right on.
Yes, I think for me that would be the same name as well, being both the 1829, 1830, and Civilization.
Oh wow!
Right. It's funny because on a recent episode on our show. One of our listeners asked us if we had a Mount Rushmore of game designers, which is, like a big monument for 4 or 5 designers. Who would it be? And one of the ones that I put on there also was Francis Tresham. And you'll maybe be flattered to hear that I also had you guys on there as well. So yeah, this is pretty exciting.
And also, maybe also, while we're talking about game designers, because for the past few years I've been invited to Alan Moon's gathering of friends over in the States, and there's a whole big lot of game designers that come there. One of the more active ones nowadays is also Tom Lehman, which is a great friend, great guy to work with and talk with, and I really adore the games that he makes and the thought he puts into them as well.
Very cool. So last thing before we get into more the designer aspect, since you guys live a couple hours apart now, do you guys have individual regular game groups that you normally game with, or do you only game when you get together, or how does that work?
I have about 3 regular game groups. So there's one bigger game group. It's called the Eindhoven Gamers, where we usually get together twice a week. So once is on the Friday evening, where we play the longer and often wackier games. Yesterday we played Time War, an old Yakinto game, which none of us had played before, and it's a big lugfest, but it's quite fun to do, and we always have fun, however bad the game is. And then there's also a group of former colleagues of mine from university, and we get together about once a month, and we play a bit more lighter and party games typically. And then of course there's the whole Splotter playtest team, where we get together as often as we can, almost.
Cool.
And how about for you, Joris?
Well, I play mostly Splotter, and then I have some friends around who will come over for games from time to time, but not as regularly as Jeroen does. I do have a lot of because we founded Splotter here we used to live in Leiden. Jeroen used to live in the same city as I do. We founded a gaming group here, which is the student group, so I'm an honorary member, but I don't go there all that often. But we do sometimes have lots of people over to come and playtest the Splotter games, both people who used to be members and people who are newer members of that group.
Okay, very cool. So let's roll into the designing aspect and why do you design games, and where do you guys get your inspiration from?
Well, why do you design games? That's an interesting question. No one has ever asked me why I design games. It's just something to do.
Because you've been doing it your whole life, essentially, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I just like the thinking about the mechanisms and making something work. I know how that Jeroen and I started working on games together when we were members of so we founded this student gaming group, which by now has, I think, 300 members here in Leiden. but it was much smaller when we founded it, of course. And in that group, we came up with lots of games, both very, very simple and light games, and much more complicated games. And Jeroen and I were always making the big complicated games, and I was also involved in making smaller games with a bunch of other people from time to time. And Jeroen was also became involved with that, but our shared love was always the bigger ones.
All right.
And so these games were originally just intended for ourselves. So we just, for instance, we'd have a gaming evening, and then we were not really didn't really want to play the same game again, and we would just take out little pieces of out of a random game. For a long time, we had a joke of always making games with the Durch die Wüste pieces, no matter what. That's from Knisia through the desert or something. I don't know what the English name is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just coming up with a game based on that and making the game. And then after we had thought of the game, no one wrote down the rules, and it was just like, okay, that's great, that's a cool game. Let's do something.
It's in history now.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about it, but I think indeed, just to reiterate one of the things that Joris said, it's also not wanting to play the same game again and again, because I also think one of the things both of us really love is exploring new games. And by now we've seen so many mechanisms and so on that for a lot of the games, especially for the simpler ones, after we've played it once, we've seen most of what's in there. I mean, it sounds a bit over the top, because it's not the case for most people, I think, but often even from just reading the rules, it's like, oh, this mechanism here, that mechanism there, they interlock there, so that's how the game works. Or at least in my mind. Sometimes I'm wrong.
So does that mean you guys start with mechanics and then figure out a theme, or is it sometimes the other way?
It can be both, because one of the big inspirations for what the games are about are always Joris' holidays. I think we designed Indonesia after you'd been there again, or?
Yeah, actually the idea for Indonesia came while I was sitting at an airport and we missed our plane, and my then girlfriend, I was extremely annoyed, and then my then girlfriend wanted to cheer me up, and she said, why don't we think of a game? And then, I went, we could make a game about Indonesia. And then when I came back, Jeroen and I thought of lots of. So what often happens is either Jeroen or I write down some ideas or little directions of mechanisms. So we write down something that's new, or that's not yet there, or that's often just an idea, and the strange thing about it is no one understands this type of talking about games, except if Jeroen and I, when we talk to each other, we somehow have a code in which we can explain mechanisms very easily, and we understand each other quickly, and then we can develop from this core something that sounds interesting. Sorry, it sounds. It may sound a bit abstract what I'm saying, but
no.
It's often something novel, a novel mechanism, or something, some combination of mechanisms that sound novel. And in the very beginning, it's a bit of it's one piece of paper, and we have written down a lot of random words, which is we add some of this, we add some of this game, we add maybe that mechanism, we have a little drawing on it, and out of that comes something that sounds or feels promising.
So you're saying that you guys talk in this code, you have this ability to do that. So obviously there's a lot of great synergy between you guys. Do you find you have certain roles in that synergy where one person focuses or is better at developing a certain aspect of the game than the other?
I don't think it's there in the very beginning. In the very beginning, we just throw around lots of ideas, and it goes in many different directions.
All right, a lot of brainstorming.
A lot of brainstorming, and I think mostly a shared idea of what to make, or interest in where it will go, because you don't really know what you're making, but you're kind of following where you're going. I think later on in the process there exists more of a task. There's more different tasks. So Jeroen is extraordinarily good at breaking any type of game and seeing how you can destroy the game when it is there. So you can have this playtest, and Jeroen comes in with a big smirk on his face, and this is going to be a 10-minute playtest, because Jeroen is going to prove after 10 minutes that he can completely destroy the game by following a certain strategy. And I almost never do that.
That's the Tony in our group right there. So on that note, how many designs are you guys carrying around in your head at a given time?
That's a really hard question to answer, but, at least for me, because in my head often there are a lot of, let's call them design components. They might all be one game. They might all be separate games.
Aha.
Most of them might not even work.
So kind of hey, we're thinking about making this game. Maybe this idea could go into it, and maybe this one, but maybe not these other ones. That type thing.
Yeah, exactly. But all of that is mainly, as Joris explained, during let's call it the conceptualization phase of thinking what is this game going to be about, what type of mechanisms are going to be in there, and once we're at almost grunt work of playtesting the same game over and over and polishing it and making sure the stuff isn't broken but also is still fun to play, then all those go into the background until you start on the next project.
Yeah, we have only one design that we work on for real, for which we have like a live playtest copy, and that we play, and that we keep track of how we change the rules, etc.
That's cool.
So it's one game that kind of once you've settled on something, you just take that to the end, and before you start on anything else.
Yeah, more or less, yes.
Mostly yes. It won't always be successful. I think. When did we do? What did we call it again? Epic or?
Apos. We discontinued. It was in then we made Great Zimbabwe instead.
Awesome.
But so we had a game that we took quite far, and then we said, okay, we don't like it. We worked on it for a year or so, and we just discontinued that game. And I think it happened twice. We did Apos, and we did Bush versus Gore, an American election game that we took actually quite far, and then we threw it out.
Interesting, really interesting.
But also the one that turned into Duck Dealer, which was about the ant colonies.
The ant colonies. We also did that one. Yeah. Did that out as well. Yeah. So it happens. So sometimes we have a game, and at some point we notice that whenever we have to get together to play the game, everyone kind of doesn't want to get together, or we come together and we play and we don't have an idea of where it should go, or we come together and we play. Normally we play test it a couple of times in a row, but then if the game's not so great, then you play test it and then you go, we bought this new game, maybe we should play that, and you go, and if there's too much of that, at some point the game gets discontinued and taken out of the lineup.
When you're doing those playtests, I'm thinking they involve other people. Is there a strategy to playtesting with other folks?
Well, in the beginning, it is a very close-knit group of people that we've play tested with really a lot. So it's Jeroen's girlfriend and a guy called Ragnar Krempel. Basically, the four of us who are there and who work on the game until it is playable. Because if you have the initial playtests, they are not really playtests. They go everywhere. You play for 5 minutes and then you go, this doesn't work, and you change everything. You spend a lot of time debating and throwing around ideas, and that's not something most people will enjoy, and we also may not enjoy the company of those other people while we are doing this, coming up with these ideas too much.
Because a lot of those early playtests aren't even games at all. They may be just mechanisms or even part of mechanisms that we want to see. Well, how does this work in practice? We've talked about it in the concept stage, but at some point you have to simply get down and see it working, or as is often the case, not working.
Well, on that note, because this is fascinating to listen to. This is. I'm excited to hear this. So, with you guys having taken some games, pretty far along and then just said no for one reason or another, what game was the hardest to finish designing and that you guys have actually published, and what about the easiest as well?
The easiest is easy to say. I think for me the easiest was Indonesia. Because
which is mind-blowing to me, because that's totally what you told me when we emailed back and forth, how it just kind of designed itself, how it was so smooth.
Yeah. It's such a fantastic game.
It just went by itself, and there was not so much balancing. There was never a phase where we really didn't know where to take the game. It kind of worked from not from the beginning, but very quickly, and certainly after we had added this idea of the mergers.
Which thank you for that.
We love the mergers.
So how long was that process for Indonesia, would you say?
I think a bit less than a year.
Wow.
Huh. So what was the hardest one to take from beginning to end?
Ooh.
Or one of?
Which one do you think, Jeroen?
Yeah, it
sounds like there's been more than one.
No, it's a hard question. Maybe even one of the hardest one was more or less the first design that we really worked hard on, which is Roads and Boats, because that took us five or 6 years. And you wouldn't believe the whole tech tree and buildings and stuff that was in there at the start. Because one of the things I think we've gotten much better at during the years of designing games is throwing out components of the game. Because how we often work is we have this huge sprawling game at some point that is kind of fun to play, but is way too long and is way too involved, and then you need to cut at least half of it, and half again, and then you end up with something playable, and playable by our standards, so then you're still at it for 4 hours or so.
Right.
Yeah, it depends. We took a long time to make a game like Roads and Boats, but for instance, when we did 1830, then because when we played Roads and Boats, it was always really, really great fun. I remember that we would have days where me and my girlfriend had to study, and we would wake up in the morning and first play one game of Roads and Boats, and then we'd play 6 games of Roads and Boats in a row with just the two of us doing, and we said, oh, it is play testing, and then we would have lost another day of play.
So you guys are just big gaming junkies, is what you're telling us, right?
For Roads and Boats, we actually we thought we would never publish it, so we made a wooden version with all little wooden and clay pieces, and all hand painted and handmade, etc., etc.
I assume you guys still have that copy, one of you, right?
Yes, I I still have the copy except for one box of Animals because I broke up with that girlfriend later, and she took one box of Roads and Boats Animals with her own color, so you can no longer play Red in that in that game.
Red's my favorite color.
That's fantastic. I'd love to see pictures of that if you ever get a chance.
Yeah,
Let me ask, I'm sorry. Yeah, we would definitely love to see pictures. What is your opinions on the introduction of digital devices into board gaming these days? There's been a couple games that are starting to go down this path. Do you think it's going to be enriching it, or maybe detract from the mental calculations and interactions?
I always wanted to make a game which used both computers and board games like 10 years ago, but I never could come up with something that I really liked. I must say, I think you can do something really cool with it, especially if you do something in the direction of storytelling and you use media and games together. But I can't say I've played anything that I really liked, but you might know that better than I do.
Yeah, I think I've played more of them than you did, but most of the ones I played was essentially you'd have the tablet or whatever take on the role of a game master who's performing some of the functions automatically for you, and I don't think that's the best use, but I also don't know a better way of integrating the two so far.
All right, so you're not opposed to it. It's just you haven't figured out a way that you want to use it.
No, and I also haven't seen a way that really works well. I mean, for me, the best one that I played was XCOM, because that also adds a bit of time pressure to your decisions, and I think that part is done relatively well. But again, that could be done by a game master too.
Okay, all right. So let's switch gears a little bit and let's focus solely on your upcoming game, Food Chain Magnate.
Everybody wants to know more about.
Right. So tell us everything, please. No. What are you guys? I mean, because it's coming out at Essen. I know you guys are still busy playtesting and so on and so forth. But with this coming out, essentially, in a few days, the podcast I'm saying, and you're only a couple months away, what can you tell our listeners about the game?
Well, it's a business game. It's going to be so we're working very hard on it today because it is really fun to play, but it's extremely unforgiving at this point in time. So people keep building their business and going bankrupt instead of making any money, because it's very hard to run your business well.
You make that sound like a bad thing.
We like unforgiving.
Well, on the one hand, yes, but it's mainly a bad thing because the way in which you go bankrupt and can get stuck is really not fun.
Well, not fun for the person who goes bankrupt. So 3/4 of the players love the game, and then one of the players like, there's something should really change in this design still. So it's a business game. You build a chain of diners set in the 50s in a city. You actually have a map of a city somewhere in a US-like environment, and it's all themed as around the 50s. So you are selling hamburgers and Coke and beer and this kind of stuff.
Chocolate shakes.
That would be a good addition, yes.
It's an expansion. But does it compare to anything else, either both mechanically or stylistically, and also weight-wise? Where does it fit in the Splotter catalog?
We always hope that it doesn't compare to something else, but once it comes out, I'm sure people will see all kinds of parallels.
Back to, it's like Catan.
No.
We're joking.
So weight-wise,
it's a It has a variable. It has variable length because the game basically ends when the bank runs out of money. But the amount of money that's in the bank is set by the players at the beginning of the game. So so it can have different lengths, but it is quite involved in terms of its of the strategy and how you need to the amount of decisions that you have to take. It's not an easy game at all because, as I said, if you run your business in the wrong way, or if and the wrong way is often you have a great plan, but your competitor has a plan that is just a little bit greater than yours. You can get into real trouble.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's always hard for me to think of what that means for weight. A very crucial thing about the game is that it has both elements where you are really involved on a board, so you're doing lots of things on the board where you have to do geographical planning, and the board is always different, and how the way that the city is built, the way that the roads are, and where people live in the city are vital for determining your strategy, what kind of restaurants you should build, how many you should build, where you should place them. But at the same time, you are busy building up your company, and the company is simulated through a whole set of cards. So you have people working in your company, and those are cards, and you can train your people. So you can change. You can train a person, and each person that you have can be trained to certain other people, and each function that you have brings with it salary and all kinds of things that you have to take care of. And these people also have to fit into a management structure. So you cannot just hire people, because if you have too many people, the managers cannot handle it. And so you're building with cards a set of functions every turn, and this determines what you can do. So if you can have a guy who can flip burgers or make pizzas, but he doesn't work so much, or you can have a guy who's specialized in making burgers, and he does much more, or you can have a great guy who can make even more burgers. But this means that you have a kind of long-term planning on which cards that you have, and a shorter-term planning on which cards you can use at which point in time, and how to figure that together.
I can't tell you how excited I'm getting. That's so awesome.
And so a large part of the decision that you make, and that's why this variable length is also very important, is if you're going to focus on building your company for flexibility, so that you have a lot of different things that you can do at every point in time, or if you're going for a very focused strategy, which can be a marketing strategy or pricing strategy or a production strategy, or even a strategy where you are the only person who has access to certain ingredients. And depending on how long the game will last and how the game will play, these different strategies will win or will be ahead at different points in time. So if the game lasts a very long time, then it's great to be very flexible. But if the game lasts a very short period of time, then having the right type of focus strategy is important.
Wow.
And
This sounds fantastic.
And what is best depends on the map, and it depends on what other players are going to come up with. So that's the only luck is the order in which you get to choose where you want to start.
Sounds wonderful. Sounds heavy. We can't wait.
Absolutely.
Was there any particular inspiration for the game, the FCM, Food Chain Magnate, and the name as well, I guess?
Well, we had a lot of ideas around the name. We thought we might call it Gluttony Incorporated, but then we thought
But that would set the wrong expectations. Joris didn't want to design 5 other games in the same series.
It was originally we really wanted to make a game about marketing, so we started with all kinds of marketing ideas.
Okay.
So that was a big area, and we wanted to make a game which had which would use a mechanism which was a variant on or a completely different way of looking at something like deck building. And so we didn't want to make a deck building game, but we wanted to make something with a deck where you had to place these cards, and you would have certain cards that you're at available, but then in a completely different way. So that's how we came up with this idea of placing the people in your company and being able to train people in your company, which basically means you have to hand in a card and get another card in a back for that. And so there's an order in which you can train people and get them better. And in this way, we can mix this idea of having a deck and having and using a subset of cards out of that and build it into a really heavy game.
And I think one of the things that, at least for me, makes it really fun to play, and I say it myself, but a really nice game is the addition of achievements that we did at some point, because there's really, if you look at it at the first time, very overpowered cards which give you enormous abilities. If you are the first or one of the first to do a certain thing in the game, you can never get all of them, but so they really focus your strategy and differentiate the players a lot.
Very cool. I'm sure people are jumping out of their skin, anxious to get a copy of it when it comes out. So, officially, when will the game be available, and how will people go about ordering it? For those of us that can't make it to Essen.
That's of course a big shame if you can't make it to Essen for all kinds of reasons. But
next year, hoping next year.
It will come out the day of Essen, so we will be presenting it in Essen. We will be sending it to all of the normal retailers who carry Splotter. There's actually quite a number of them, but normally it does sell out within half a year or so after we publish the game. Also, you can buy it from our website. It will be up, I think, in September. We will August or September that we will have the drawings of the box. It will be on the website, and you can order it from there, and we will ship it direct.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about game publishing. And
because I hear you guys have some sort of publishing company or something or other.
we understand where Spellen comes from in the name. Just a hobby.
Yeah.
Fantastic one. So we understand Spellen, but what about Splotter? Where did the word Splotter come from in your name?
The way that we came up with this name is we had to the very first time we started making games, we actually started publishing some of these games that I talked about, which were the very simple games. We made them in video boxes. Mm-hmm. Yep. And the reason we started is that we found out we were with a group of people, Corné, who still runs Kwali Games, and a guy called Theo Jansma who started a company Zuidon, but that no longer exists. We were a couple of Dutch guys, and we said we were together in a Dutch gaming society, and we wanted to publish games, or then actually my girlfriend found out that there was my girlfriend Tamaha found out that there was you could hire a stand at Essen, and it was not so expensive, because the stands in Essen, if you hire a small stand, they make it relatively inexpensive so that young publishers can hire a stand there. If you have a big stand, it's much more expensive. So that's a great thing. And so we hired this stand at the very, very last moment with the three of us. And then we went, oh dear, we still have to have games to sell at this place, because we had some ideas and we had some, but we had never made multiple copies. So we were really in a rush, and then we started making these games. And a friend of mine who was involved with the company for years at the beginning, one of the partners, he went out he stopped a couple of years ago, Herman Haverkort. He did all the graphic design at that point in time. And so we were sitting there at somewhere late in the evening, and we went, okay, now he says, we need a name for the company as well, because it has to be on the box.
Yes.
That's a problem. And so Tamara had drawn a very nice little otter, which held this die. Because Tamara and I are both biologists by training, and so she thought it would be great to have this otter holding a die. And so we said, let's call it Otter Games. But yeah, Otter Games. It sounds like other games or something. It didn't sound great. So then someone said, we call it Spell Otter, because the spell is game in Dutch. So we call it Spell Otter Games. And we had Spellotter. Oh, maybe Splotter. Okay. And that's
that's awesome, because we were going to ask. We were going to ask, like, is he the Splotter Otter? But no, that makes total sense. That's fantastic.
And so, we're in luck, because you can actually pronounce this name in many countries, and it happens that there's nothing else called Splotter, so that's also nice. I mean, it works as a name.
All right, so I know you went to Essen in '99, and you had no games to sell. That was pretty interesting to read. But can you tell our listeners briefly about what I'm going to butcher this, I think, but Enschede, the city there, they ordered a couple copies of one of your games. How did that come to be?
Well, that actually went about slightly differently, because I think it was through Dutch Game Authors Association that we got a link through to the town of Enschede, and they had this strange idea. They had a budget. They needed to make some promotion for what was called grote stedenbeleid, so a new type of policies. And then instead of doing what all the other towns were doing and just printing flyers and giving that to people, they thought, hey, but why don't we make a game and give that to everybody, because that will be much better remembered, and people will actually remember something of this new policy. At least that was the idea. I don't know how well that part worked out, but so then they thought, you guys, well, how do we actually go about in making a game? So let's see if we can find some game designers to do this. And they came to one of our colleagues in that association who didn't have any time to do that. So he talked to me and Joris and said, hey, I've got this guy from the town of Enschede who wants a little game about grote stedenbeleid. Maybe there's something for you guys to do.
And that in the very beginning, they wanted the game just to give it to all of the people who worked at the city council. So it was a very small job. So we designed a game for them, and we showed them the game, and they really loved it. It's a card game called Spul. Or now it's called Spul, which is game in the dialect of Enschede. And they really loved it, and they said, we really love this game. It's not so expensive, although making a card game for 200 people is quite expensive. 200 copies of a card game is quite expensive in our eyes, but they thought it was quite cheap. So how about we make 50,000 copies of this game and give it to every single person in the city? Could we get a 10% discount in that case? Which is, it is much cheaper to make 50,000 games per copy than to make. So we just looked at them and said, yes, of course you can get a 10% discount. Maybe
I reckon you would.
And so this was a very big order at the time, and we used a large amount of the proceeds of that to then publish our first. Before that, the only games we published, we made them all by hand. So we printed them and we placed stickers, and we had all handmade games. And because we made a little bit of money out of this promotional game Spul, we had the ability to publish some of the other games. And then we decided to publish Roads and Boats, which was the first really big game that we made, which was an enormous investment at the time. Because we did not have so much money, but we thought maybe we would sell it, and that worked out okay.
Yeah, not too bad.
Amazing how it's come together. In terms of game publishing, do you guys have any particular outlook or opinion on crowdfunding, like Kickstarter and things like that?
I personally don't really like it to do it for me. I mean, I think it's a great mechanism for people who need the money to start their business. I think that's really great, but I really hate to promise people things that are not yet there.
Sure.
So I prefer to have first the game and then sell it, and if people like it, they can buy it, and if they don't buy it. But I would feel very awkward if I had put some of the games that we have worked on Kickstarter, and we have promised to have a certain game by a certain date, and I look at the game and I go, I don't like this game, and then you can't really throw it away because you have made these commitments already.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I don't really like to do that, and we are in the situation that we are not really limited by capital when we want to publish a game. We have made just enough from older games that we can publish the game and take the risk ourselves. We don't need to ask money from people before we have done any work.
Fantastic.
So on that note, kind of, Splotter is known as a quote unquote boutique publisher. Small print runs, and with small print runs tend to be higher prices. Do you guys have any aspirations of getting publishing partners to get your games to more people, or are you just satisfied with the reach your games have? I mean, with the raving fans that you guys have, I could see that as a no, we're all set. But which is it? How do you guys feel about that? Do you want to branch out, or are you guys happy where things are with Splotter?
Well, from time to time we have discussions with people who want to publish something, and we've never been approached by someone who came up with numbers or volumes which were so much higher than what we do ourselves that we would say, hey, that's really interesting, let's go for it. Oftentimes people want to change or streamline or make different graphics and make the games more mainstream if they want to publish something, and I'm not absolutely opposed to it, but I'm not that excited by it either. So I guess we're pretty happy about where we are. It could be a little bit bigger, but we don't need it to be bigger either. So,
gotcha.
But for both of us, I said it jokingly earlier, but it's more of a hobby to run Splotter for both of us. It doesn't need to pay for our income, and that's a great situation to be in, because if a game doesn't work out in a year, we can simply say, well, we throw it away, we start something else. It's not all of a sudden we don't have any bread to eat anymore that year.
So that, with that rationale, it helps keep the quality of the game, the actual development of the game, as high as it can be, because if you're not happy with it, you just trash it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Okay. So, Jeroen is meticulous. I know you are for the last few years when it comes to logging your plays on Board Game Geek. And when we were getting ready for the interview, I went back through a couple months of your plays, and I keep seeing Unpublished Prototype being played, along with Food Chain Magnate. Well, Food Chain Magnate has its own entry now on BGG, so is this Unpublished Prototype something that's coming out later, or is that Food Chain Magnate? Or, I guess, a long way to ask it, what's next after Food Chain Magnate?
I don't know yet. The logs there are those are simply also for Food Chain Magnate itself.
Gotcha.
I played quite a bit of other prototypes back in April at the Gathering of Friends. Most of them not their own. A couple I'm also quite excited about coming out, but some of them have been announced already, others have not been yet.
Okay. So do you guys have any... I realize that you're focused on Food Chain Magnate, and as you said earlier, you hone in on one design usually, and then once that's done, then move on to something else. But do you guys have any kind of inkling of an idea of what may be next after FCM?
No, not really yet, I think.
Cool.
No,
Okay.
I think there's many ideas, but what needs to happen is this phase of really getting together and bringing up ideas and fighting each other over what is nice and what is not nice, and then coming to it saying, oh, this is really great. Yeah, that's really great. Let's combine this. And then normally once we have the game and we show it in Essen, then after that there is a phase where, first of all, we have lots of games from Essen to play. And second, we are a little bit tired of spending every weekend or every second weekend playing Splotter prototypes. So there's this new ideas normally come in somewhere December or something, November. It used to be that we came up with the idea for the new game while driving back from Essen, because we would stay at my parents' house, which is about an hour and a half from Essen, and so we would have 5 days of driving back to my parents' house. But these days we stay in a hotel in Essen, so that's no longer the case. And then we play games rather than talk about new designs.
I would think you guys deserve it after the amount of time and effort going into each one of these. Yeah, that makes sense.
Can you guys share with us and the listeners, is there any current goals on reprinting games?
Yeah, the philosophy of it.
Well, philosophy, that's a big word. Basically, we normally only reprint in a year where we are not publishing a new game. So we, just because it's a lot of work also to reprint, we normally don't do a reprint and a new game in the same year. And we need to have some kind of conviction that a certain game is going to do really well, because it's and this is perhaps an area where something like a Kickstarter could work, but still I don't like it all that much. So and this is a really difficult decision, funnily enough. So we have been burnt in the past. We had once when we published the game Buzz, everyone was really excited. We sold out in, I think, a couple of weeks, and we republished, and then we took 4 years to sell the copies that we republished. So we're always quite careful, and we're looking for a really big demand from people for a republished game. Having said that, I think that we republished Antiquity and Roads and Boats in the past couple of years, and that was quite successful. So we might very well republish Indonesia and possibly Zimbabwe in the coming years, because I'm sure that, or I'm not sure, but I don't think, unless we are very lucky, that there will be another new release in 2016, unless we come up with a game that designs itself. But that,
i.e. Indonesia, right?
Indonesia too, yes.
I'll be honest. Now, I'm pretty active on Board Game Geek, and obviously the amount of people that are on Board Game Geek is a small portion of, game players out there. But the demand for Indonesia and Great Zimbabwe has just, people are just chomping at the bit for both of them. I mean, I'm grateful that I have the majority of your main, big time games. A lot of the older games, not so much. But I appreciate that I have them. But I know there is a huge desire for those reprints.
Just personally speaking, I don't own a copy of Indonesia, and it's like one of my top favorite games of all time. And I just got a copy of Great Zimbabwe, so please reprint Indonesia so that I could get a copy.
All right, so that kind of wraps up the serious part. We have a couple real quick.
Two more.
A couple more fun questions here for you. First off, do you listen to podcasts, gaming or otherwise? And if so, I hope you've heard of us before we wrote you. Lie. Just lie.
Well, yes, but of course, certainly before doing the interview, we watch whoever wants to interview us. But yes, we'd heard of you before. But I don't watch that many gaming podcasts. Jeroen might. The only podcast that I listen to very consistently is one about single malt whiskies, which I happen to like a lot. But that's I think the only podcast that I never miss a series of. And I used to watch always StarCraft podcast by Day 9 when he was still doing that, but he kind of disappeared. StarCraft is a game that I really, really enjoy as well.
All right. What about you, Jeroen?
Yeah, I had heard of you before you contacted us, but I don't really listen to any podcasts. I like reading about games or other interests much more than listening to them.
All right.
Last question, guys. Favorite Dutch food?
Stroopwafels.
Whoa.
Say that one more time.
Slowly.
Stroopwafels.
What is that?
It's a type of cookie with caramel in between.
Yes. Oh, Jason, my friend Jason, just brought me back some of those because he went to Amsterdam.
Okay, so
I know what that is.
So what you're telling me is these are excellent cookies, and if we make it to Essen next year, you will bring some down to Essen.
Oh, definitely, we can do that.
All right, rock on. All right,
Joris, your favorite food?
My favorite Dutch food, I think, would be maybe a very old Dutch cheese. It's a type of cheese that is extremely salty, hard cheese, like what you call Gouda, which is actually called Gouda. But then very hard and salty with a lot of flavor in it. And then you should eat that on rye bread. That's dark rye bread. That's really nice.
Yeah, I love
all right,
that as
excellent.
well.
Say again?
I love that as well.
Nice.
All right, rock on. Well, Jeroen and Joris, we can't thank you guys enough for taking the time to talk to us today. We're obviously big fans of yours, and a lot of our listeners are as well. Mm-hmm. We look forward to Food Chain Magnate, as well as pretty much everything else you guys design in the future. It's been a lot of fun, both playing your games as well as talking today. So good luck in the future, and we hope to touch base with you guys again.
Yeah. Thank you. Also, all the best with your podcast, and hopefully we see each other in Essen or somewhere else soon.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you guys.
would be great. Thank you for
so,
inviting us and having us on the show.
We're so very appreciative of your generosity with your time today, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So that was fun.
That really was. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to that.
I hope so. I was nervous at the beginning, I'll be honest, because I didn't know what to expect from them.
Yeah.
But their English was great.
Their English was good.
And they were... It was nice to be able to ask a question, and for the most part, just get out of the way. Go for it, guys. Because they're not listening to us. This is the one time that people aren't listening to our episode to hear us. They wanted to hear this. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And now that this has kind of whet our appetite for interviews, if I or we make it to Essen next year, I might try and take a day and take a train ride up to England and maybe...
through the channel.
Yeah, and maybe try and touch base with Francis Tresham and try and do a face-to-face interview. I'm not saying it's realistic. I'm saying you got to have goals. So there you go. So rolling on to some other stuff. On our guild on BGG this week, I posted, or I guess as it were last week for you guys, the state of the podcast 1 year in.
Yep.
A big, huge thank you to everybody who took the time to chime in. It's just awesome feedback. We wanted the corrective criticism, and we wanted the positives and the negatives, and you guys delivered on that. And nobody was a huge douche canoe about it, so thank you.
And not that anyone has to wait for an anniversary, but I think this is something we should do every year.
Yeah, I think so. Kind of a
sanity check.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Where are we, and are we on the right road?
Right.
Do you guys like this? So for those listening that aren't aware of this thread that we started in the guild on, the thread's not getting deleted, it's not getting locked, anything like that. So if you're just now hearing about it, go to our guild on BGG and chime in. We'd love to hear it.
Our website is heavycardboard.com. Our email address is contact@heavycardboard.com. Our Twitter is @heavycardboard. Facebook, heavycardboard. Our Instagram is heavycardboard. And our BGG guild number is 2044. And our Patreon is patreon.com/heavycardboard. We want to thank the great people at Game Surplus for their sponsorship of our show. These are good people, and they have a great reputation and a great inventory of games, including many imports and hard-to-find games. Their tagline is the home of great games at great prices, and it's true. So check them out at gamesurplus.com. And when you do, tell them Heavy Cardboard sent you.